Good morning. So we're going to talk about pedigrees today. This is a way that geneticists and people can track traits. What they actually use them for in the real world today is for tracking diseases and disorders um, throughout families is really what they're used for today. So, um, so it's kind of like a family tree. So, like I said, it's used to depict patterns of traits or diseases. Usually it's diseases. So, um, thinking about like the breast cancer genes, Alzheimer's genes, things like that. So, they're looking for the patterns, but they're also used to predict the probability that a couple might pass on that trait or disease. Before we get to a pedigree, there's a couple of symbols that you need to be aware of. The first being that anytime you see a circle, that means a female. Anytime you see a square, that means it's male. Because they're not going to label any of these. If half of the box is shaded in, or half of the circle is shaded in, that means that they're a carrier for that trait or disease. So, most of the time, most diseases that you would track are going to be recessive. So you're not going to typically have them if you are if you're heterozygous, which is always show that you're a carrier. So again, you can pass it on, you just don't have it. And generally, if you have that particular trait or disease, we color in the entire box or circle. Now in this case, I've done it in white. Probably should have done it in black, because normally you'll so like this one looks like they're normal because they don't have any color. This would be a completely filled in box with black, and this would technically be a white one. So, I mean, I probably should have colored this black, not white. So, anything that links like this means that there was a marriage, and that any line coming down from that bar means children, and they can have multiple children. So they could have like 3 down here. So I'll show you. So if there's anything coming out from it, it means it's going back to its parent or the person's parent or sibling. So those are the things that you want to be aware of when you're reading and when you're making your pedigrees. So using the alleles big B and little b, you want to identify the following genotypes for each individual. From that, you can tell if they would have had this particular disease. So this individual is a male, and he is has a complete white box, which means that he is homozygous dominant. If he was a carrier, he'd be halfway shaded. So he would be big B, big B. He married a woman here who does have this particular disease or trait. So she would be, since she's completely shaded in, she'd be little b, little b. Okay. So they're married, that's what that bar means. Then this means that they had kids. They had 2 kids here. There's no line here, which means they didn't get married. Since the line is up here, that means that they're siblings. As I said, it looks very much like a family tree. Both of these kids are carriers, which makes sense if you think about it. All dad has to give is the big B. All mom has to give is the little b. Okay? So daughter over here marries man who is normal, is not a carrier, so his genotype would be big B, big B. They have 2 children, one who is completely normal and one who is a carrier. So the normal kid here would be big B, big B, normal girl. then this girl would be a carrier, and she would be big B, little b. Okay, and then over here we would have these two, this guy, this boy who came from these two individuals, married a woman who was a carrier also for this disease. And they had two girls also, but this girl is normal, so she inherited both dominant alleles from her parents. So she's big B, big B. This daughter, however, inherited both of the disease or trait genes that we're looking for. And so she, pardon me, she would be little b, little b. So generally what we can do is try to figure out how, who has what. So, okay. Now we're going to do one genetics problem. Okay. Oh, by the way, back up here, you can tell here that there are 3 generations. So, each line, 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations. Okay, tongue rolling. We're going to use the letter T, dominant trait. So now we're going to track this. A tongue rolling man. So we're going to draw him as a square. We know he can roll his tongue. So we know he has at least 1 big T. We have no idea if he is heterozygous or homozygous recessive. It's going to depend on his kids. He marries a woman that can't roll her tongue. So you draw the circle. And since she is a non-rolling tongue person, we know she is homozygous recessive. So we're going to give her 2 little t's, and we're going to color her circle all the way in. Okay? Then what we're going to do is they have 3 kids. So we're going to draw a space for 3 kids. Okay? They have a boy, 1 girl, and 1 girl. So a boy, 1 girl, and 1 girl. So from underneath them, they're going to have 1 circle, or 2 circles and 1 square. The boy and 1 of the girls cannot roll their tongues. So it means that they are homozygous recessive, so they're going to be completely colored in. Okay? And 1 girl can roll her tongue. The second girl can roll her tongue, so we know she's 1 big B. So now we can go back and add in dad's second allele, because son and first daughter can't roll their tongues. The only way that would happen, since it's recessive, is if dad would have passed on. They obviously got that non-rolling tongue gene from mom, but the only other way they can not roll their tongues is if dad passed it along too. So we know now that dad has to be heterozygous. So now we can put that there and then color half of his box in, since he's a carrier. The second daughter obviously got her ability to roll the tongue from dad. And we know that her mom could only pass on the recessive allele, so she also has to be a carrier. Okay? So, all right, with this next one, hemophilia, I want you to try it first. It's going to be a little more complex, and then, so push pause, try it, and then come back and I'll walk you through it, and we'll see what you come up with. The other thing is, sometimes, based on what I've given you, you may not know the second allele. So you may only know that the individual was dominant. You may not be able to tell that they were heterozygous or homozygous dominant, in which case you would just leave it blank or put like a little question mark for that second allele, because we wouldn't be able to say with the information given if that individual was homozygous dominant or heterozygous. So go ahead and push pause, try this one, and then come back. Okay. So let's check this. Hemophilia is a recessive disease. So the only way you're going to get it is if you get two recessive alleles. A man that shows no signs of having hemophilia marries a woman with hemophilia. So we know he has at least one dominant allele. So we'll denote that with a capital H. We don't know what his second one is. Woman has hemophilia, so she is homozygous recessive. So she's got two little H's, and we're going to color her circle all the way in. Okay, they have two kids. Let's make them boys. Okay, I probably should have wrote that. Sorry. So, one of them has hemophilia. So we know that he has two little H's. The other one shows no signs of hemophilia. So we know he has at least one big H. But because mom definitely has hemophilia, we know he's a carrier. We can now go back and see that dad has to be a carrier because that's the only way he can have a son or a kid that has hemophilia. Okay. The man's mother and father both showed no signs of hemophilia. So now we got to go back up to dad and draw his parents up above him. They're both normal. So one of them, so we know that they both have at least one big H. One of them has to be a carrier because otherwise he had to receive that one from somewhere. So we know one of them has to be a carrier. But since we don't know anything else, we can just leave their second allele blank. You can put a question mark for both his parents. So the paternal grandparents or the parents of the dad, we don't know what their alleles were. We know one of them had to be the carrier, but you're going to go ahead and leave it, both of them as big H with a question mark because we don't know. All right, the woman's father had hemophilia. So draw her parents above her, color dad in, and give him little h because he had hemophilia. And mom showed no signs of hemophilia. So we know that she had to have been at least one big H. Now, the only way mom could have gotten hemophilia is if her mother was a carrier. Because we know she definitely got one allele from dad, which makes sense because he had hemophilia. And then mom, her mother, the maternal grandmother, obviously had to be a carrier. Otherwise, she would have passed on both, or she could have passed on just her dominant. But because mom ended up with hemophilia, we know mom had to have given her, grandma. Grandma had to have given mother a lowercase h. So grandma is grandma of our mother of mom has to be a carrier. So you should have all three generations. The only two people we were able to finish were dad's parents. You know that, like I said, we know they're both dominant, but we just don't know. We don't know if one of them was a carrier. We just don't know which one. They both could have been carriers, but we don't actually know. So these are pedigrees. I will probably give you pedigree problems more like the first one, this one. And then I might give you one or two of these as a challenge because this one is very difficult. So if you do have questions, please ask. I know this one is very complicated, so it's not uncommon for people to have questions. So if you do, please don't hesitate to ask for help. So have a good day.